So they have a saying, come to Hawaii, the weather will be nice. Not this time around.
Not this time.
But Dan, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it because it's the day before the race. I think you have
Evening before.
the evening, yeah.
And it has been a big week.
Yeah.
And
So I think we in our community, we really appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
And before I say anything about you and have it wrong or get it wrong, maybe you can introduce yourself a little bit. So what's your background? Where are you coming from, scientifically especially?
Yeah. So Dan Plews. I started as a triathlete myself, very young, through the British system. Mainly the Olympic distance, got into coaching, then I was doing a scholarship at Leeds Metropolitan University, where Alistair Brownlee was at the time as a junior. Left there, went to Singapore, did a bit more coaching, but then I got really into the science and I started working with Singapore Sports Council. Did my masters whilst I was at Leeds, but then I went over to New Zealand and I did a PhD. And that PhD was in heart rate variability. So, and since then, I guess I've continued down that sports science realm with coaching as well. But I've worked in a lot of different sports. I was with the Olympic rowing, New Zealand Olympic rowing for nearly 8 years. Went to the Rio and the London Olympics for that. I still work in women's kayak a little bit. I've done cycling. I was the head of performance for Emirates Team New Zealand, so America's Cup sailing. So I've done loads of different stuff. But now my main thing is I still work for a university, but I'm I guess a professional triathlon coach. You could say, yeah.
And now you are coaching which athletes?
Yes, I coach Chelsea Sodaro, Javier Gomez, and Aaron Royal at the moment.
Yeah. Okay.
I was coaching Jan van Berkel until recently, but he's now
the Keto Cup.
The Keto Cup, the official Keto Cup. But now he's retired.
He's retired. Yeah. So I saw you with Jan in Thun actually.
Yes.
It was his last race.
It was his last race. Yeah. It was
and he
really
won.
good.
Great
he
job.
won. Yeah. And so that was a very special moment. I've been coaching Jan for 8 years, so it was it was a nice way to finish home in his hometown, home area, the country, and it was good.
Great job. You already mentioned it. It was the topic of your PhD, HRV.
Yeah.
So in general, when you tell the people out there, your athletes maybe, or some other folks out there, in your terms, what is HRV?
So mechanistically, HRV as we sat here now, for example, our heart rate might be 60, but that doesn't mean that the gap between each heartbeat is just 1 second. So in reality, that gap is varying all the time. So it might change from 1,000 milliseconds and 1,200 milliseconds, and then whatever it might be, but it changes all the time. And that is, in essence, you're looking at how much there is a variation between beats, or variation between the R to R intervals. And those people will know what an R to R interval is. If you watch any hospital program and it's
emergency room,
it's like it's got those. It's that big spike is the R to the other R, and it's it's that gap. And basically, there's lots of different ways of measuring HRV, lots of different indices, but we won't get into those details. But all of those indices, what they're all doing is they're all looking at how much that gap between each beat is varying. And the reason that we're interested in this is because the HRV is linked back to the autonomic nervous system. So the autonomic nervous system it means it's actually Latin for self. So we have no self-regulation over it. It just happens automatically. Like when you walk into a room, your pupils might dilate, or you might get scared and your hair stand up, and then that's all the autonomic nervous system. But where we're really interested is there's two sides to it. There's the parasympathetic side, which is rest and digest. So hopefully we're sat here now, we just had a nice liqueur, kind of a bit chilled, nice and rested. Or there's a sympathetic side, which is the fight or flight, where we're a bit more stressed. So I was actually pretty stressed before you picked me up, because I just
not because of me.
not because of you, definitely not. No, but yeah. So there's it's a balance, right? So it's not one's on, one's off. You're either more predominant in one or you're more predominant in the other. And they go, it's called a sympathovagal balance. So at the moment we're predominantly parasympathetic, but if we just suddenly get a fright, we'll shift very quickly into the sympathetic response, and our parasympathetic will come down. And of course, like, this is very influenced by exercise. So if you exercise hard, you'll be very sympathetic, almost predominantly sympathetic. But then it's looking at how that comes back into line when you recover, and how that changes with training adaptation.
And yeah, so you're already talking about some influences. How can we, or can someone out there listening, influence HRV in one or the other direction?
Yeah.
I mean, more like in the parasympathetic.
Yeah. I mean, everyone's more interested always. You want to be more parasympathetic when you're not exercising, right? If you're parasympathetic when you're exercising, you're gonna have a bit of a problem.
Yeah.
But there's lots of different cues that you can do it. But the main things really would be nutrition. I think nutrition has a big part to play in your HRV. So like things like alcohol major is really suppresses your HRV. Like if you even for me, for example, even a tiny bit, I notice a difference. And just general fast foods and more refined sugars and processed foods. Sleep is a massive, really important one. And what I did my PhD in and what I was really interested in was exercise. So how different types of exercise influence your HRV. And what we know is that, like, generally low intensity exercise will help boost your HRV. So when we say low intensity, it's kind of maintaining exercise below the first aerobic threshold.
Other people will know.
Yeah.
I already told them.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so that's good. So when you keep exercising at a low intensity, it will increase. But if you do too much at a high intensity, it will gradually bring it down over time. If you do it consistently without recovering. So.
Okay, and how do you use it with your athletes? Like, for example, Chelsea, maybe also like here on the islands, it's also a different environment.
Yeah. So it's really good for changing the environment, because often that change in the environment comes with added stresses. So heat is an added stress. We know it's going to increase heart rate. We know that also thresholds shift down generally. So so it's a really good way to make sure that you're not making them do more training than you really want to. So, for example, if you came onto the island and you said, okay, we've been doing these efforts at 340 watts in the temperate conditions, and we come here and we do the same thing, totally different physiological response, and the HRV will pick that up, which is really handy. So you can see how things are going over time. But generally, it's not just what HRV is telling you on a given day. I as a coach, I'm always looking at trends. So I'm looking at the trends, like rolling averages, like 10-day rolling averages over time, over a given training block, but also how that's varying on a day-to-day basis. So the day-to-day variation is almost as important as the HRV in itself, and that's something that I take quite seriously and look at a lot. So if we're doing a training block, like come to on a training camp, wherever it might be, and we're doing a good training camp, and we're doing it like most people would be, mostly aerobic work with some high intensity work, but the main proportion of training is aerobic or below VT1 or the aerobic threshold. We generally expect to see HRV be stable and high, and usually sometimes increasing. But if you're seeing it to be very volatile, like changing a lot every day, stable, or even going down, then you're probably not really adapting to the training as well as you might. So you might do some things like you might take out some of the high intensity work, you might add in like some recovery sessions and make sure they're getting the nutrition right, making sure the sleep's right. And
even maybe a rest day.
Yeah, a rest day, yeah. Or or making an active recovery day or whatever that might be. Yeah, so that's where it can be really handy.
Rest days are really hard for triathletes. Right?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. No one likes a rest day.
No, even just an easy swim.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's where it can be like really useful. But also, if you're kind of, you can also have it the other way, that sometimes you want to drive it down. If you're doing like a block of high intensity, you might say, okay, for this week, we talk about training density, right? Where you go high density in your training, where you put a lot of high intensity sessions back to back to back. you'd want to see your HRV
like
go
the
down.
Ronestad studies out there.
The Ronestad study. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so he's done a lot of that block periodization stuff, and he has really big effects.
Yeah.
So for those who don't know, Ronestad, he'll do, like, if you have a 4-week block, for example, rather than doing 1 week that's kind of 80-20, for example. I'm sure everyone knows what 80-20 would be in terms of training intensity distribution.
So, yeah. Polarized.
So polarized training. So rather than doing it over a week, he'd do it over 4 weeks, where you do like 1 week of all high intensity and then 3 weeks of...
Yeah, we gave our community some block training training plans.
Yeah.
So they called me already the Hell Devil.
Yeah. I've done those as well. But they're really effective. So
this is why you have your icon in WhatsApp.
Okay. Exactly. The brain.
Okay. It looks like a little bit like a devil.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's that actually comes from Jan van Berkel, because he used to call himself. We used to call ourselves Pinky and the Brain. You know. Okay. Have you seen that cartoon?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So it all came from when we used to say what we're going to do today, and I'm like, the same thing as we do every day. Yeah. I mean, we're going to train.
Okay. Which gadgets can we use, or which would you say, okay, they are good, or maybe that's not so good, or just say what's good?
Yeah. I mean, so when I did my PhD, I was in this place where it was a polar heart rate monitor. The RS 800CX was the first heart rate monitor to start doing HRV. And to be honest, it was a real pain in the ass for me as a student trying to do my PhD, because the athlete would have to get up in the morning, they have to get the heart rate strap on, we'd take 5 minutes of recordings, then they'd bring it to me, and at the time I was at rowing, and I'd have to get this watch, and it was like infrared, and I had to
I know that one.
Line it up, you'd line it, and then it'd disconnect, and then I'd have to take that, and then I'd have to get the data, put it into an Excel, and do all this analysis. But now, so back then I always think, like, everything in sport, everything that we do is cost versus reward, right? And I think then it was quite costly when we didn't really know what we were doing. We didn't know as much about it as we do now. Whereas now we're at this place where it's so easy to do, because we have wearables like the Oura Ring, like the Whoop, that you can do it overnight. It's super easy. You have PPG technology on the back of your phone, which is also very accurate.
With HRV for training.
HRV for training, the Marco Altini. So they're all great. They're all really good, and you can... and the cost is so little, because it's just so simple.
It's so convenient.
Convenient. Goes straight into the analysis platform, and they're all perfect, really. I mean, if you look at the studies, they're all very close. So, I think it just comes into like a bit of lifestyle, and then what's convenient for you. If you're the very, very best would be to wake up in the morning, heart rate strap into the phone, and take it yourself when you're awake, not during your nighttime sleep. But I mean, for me, I'm a dad. You met my kids, they're running around everywhere, right? So I can't always guarantee I'm going to get that little minute. So I use the Oura Ring to get it during the nighttime. So it's different. What kind of?
But you have to be consistent in that.
But consistency is everything. Exactly.
Again.
Consistency is key. I mean, sometimes I haven't got it on now, but sometimes I will wear the Whoop and the Oura at the same time, because if the battery dies in one, I can always be backed up by the other. So then I'll enter that data into HRV for training. So because with all these things, you can have the most accurate data as you like, but if the most important thing is the interpretation. If you're not,
and that you have them.
Yes. Exactly.
If you have all the little gaps in there, it's yours.
So you need the consistency, and then you need the interpretation, because if you don't really have someone who's interpreting the data for you or doing it properly, it's hopeless. And I think, like HRV for training, the Marco Altini has a coaches app, and that will be that's how I do all my data with all my athletes. So all my athletes, it goes into the coaching app. I can look at it all in one line. And that's how I analyze the data. I don't like the platforms like the Whoop platform and the Oura Ring platform. I mean, they're hopeless in the analysis side. So
they are just for the general public.
Just for general public. But if you really want to get serious with the data, you've got to get it into somewhere that's going to interpret it properly for you.
And talking about micronutrients, can you take us a little bit there? So we did a lot of talking about magnesium and sleep. Can you see an influence there, or might there be an
Yeah,
influence?
yeah. So I mean, with the micronutrition, I think there's a few sides to this. There's when it comes to HRV, if anything that's influencing your HRV and it's making it higher and more consistent is a good thing. And you know, I always think of the pillars of recovery. So that's nutrition, sleep, and training periodization. They're the three main things that are going to make the biggest difference, right?
Like
you know,
the Silo pyramid, you have your own one.
yeah, I do. Yeah, I have my own one. Yeah, exactly. So I mean, but with that, like magnesium would fall into the nutrition, but the main influence that that's having is likely going to be on your sleep.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're getting better sleep, you're getting more deep sleep, then that's going to affect your HRV. And you know, at Pillar, you know, we have the triple magnesium, which has you know the which is 3 types of magnesium. So we're covering all bases. You know, it's more biologically readily available. There's different sources that are all doing different things. Some are better for the brain, some are better for your nervous system. And we've really found that people, when athletes take it, sleep quality generally improves. But more than that, because the sleep quality on these wearable devices, a little bit dodgy. But
I saw the data. Yeah.
Yeah, but the HRV, you know, really does improve it. But even we see big improvements with other areas of micronutrition, such as fish oil, so ultra omega that we have, you know, because that's reducing inflammation so much. It's reducing.
I'm already testing it.
Yeah. So it reduces inflammation, brings down the sympathetic nervous system. HRV generally improves. And what we've been quite getting into some of this data with some universities, and you know, one of the first things you do before you go into real experimental data is you say, okay, what are the fish the omega content in the blood of most athletes, and most athletes are actually very low in fish in the optimal level of omegas. So, you know, I think it's
so the ratio of 3 to 6. Or,
the EPA versus DHA, and but generally either way they're generally low. It's something that I think it's one of the. I get really excited about the fish oil stuff because I think there's a lot of good stuff that comes out of it, particularly with more research coming out in the reductions in the inflammation can potentially help with the adaptation of other things as well. So if you're reducing inflammation by taking a fish oil, for example, you may be getting more adaptation from your training generally. So pretty exciting.
And fun fact, I heard that the source is like from Norway.
Yeah.
Like in the nearby Bergen, where all the Christian Blumenfels and
maybe there's something in it. See? Maybe there's something in it. Yeah. But it also for years, fish oils was one of those things that I never took because I always hated the aftertaste. You know how it can sometimes repeat on you, and then you just taste it all day, and I just didn't like it. But with the Pillar Ultra Omega, I actually bite the capsule, spit the capsule out, and no aftertaste. So
I didn't try that, but maybe I have to.
Yeah, you should. It's amazing. My kids, like, you know, they're 3 and 4 and 6, and they ask for fish juice. And they bite it, and they take it.
Yeah,
so
that speaks for itself.
Yeah, exactly. They go, fish juice, Daddy.
Okay.
Yeah. Like a little begging dog.
Okay, Dan. Next block is about training, and I mean, with Chelsea, you already showed that you have some experience for prepping someone for Kona. So I asked that actually Björn and Philip, so Björn Gisman and Philip Seib, if they do something different for this race, because it's for us from Germany, it's a big time shift, we have jet lag, it's not the same humidity, not the same temperature. So, but from your point of view, do you think you change your preparation, for example, for Chelsea in comparison to Roth, because she did Roth this year?
Yeah, I think it's so simple, but the main difference, of course, is the heat. The heat, you have to prepare for the heat. I mean, in Roth, we did altitude block just before that.
In St. Moritz?
Yeah, in St. Moritz. So we went to St. Moritz, then we did like 3 weeks there, and then we did like 2 weeks sea level, and then race. But here, the main thing is all about the heat acclimation. So I think we have something very specific in place, which I don't really want to talk too much about. That I think is.
I had some questions about that.
Yeah, that
I
I think it's better than what anyone else is doing personally.
Okay.
Yeah.
You should know. You should think that.
Yeah, and I think that, and that's the main thing I focus on. But in terms of the training, doesn't really change that much, because at the end of the day, you've still got to swim, bike, and run.
It's a triathlon.
It's a triathlon, and those are the differences, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we do a lot. We do spend a lot of time on this course, because I believe that this course is very specific. There's certain things that need to be trained, and you can only do it on this course.
Okay, what do you think is different? Can you take us a little bit? Just
I think like the nature of the run course is hillier than what people give it credit for. Like, there's no flat on that run at all.
Yeah.
There's it's either gradual up or gradual down. And I would say that the same on the bike. It's very, very rolly. And I think like where you put the power down at certain times makes a big difference.
Yeah, we did it yesterday.
Yeah,
yesterday.
It's quite rolly.
Yeah.
And where you put power down at certain times, it makes a big difference to the overall speed of your bike, bike time. And also being here a lot and knowing what generally happens with the winds, I think is also quite good for the mind, because often you can be racing here and or training here and you're like, oh, it's such a hard headwind and I've got another 40k, then suddenly you've got a tailwind. But it's very specific to where on the course you are, and if you know, it says, oh, I know that there's likely a tailwind at this point. I think that's also quite
it angles quite a lot, and then
it generally angles the same way most of the time, generally.
So is she training also at the times of the race, or
most of the time? Yeah, I mean, generally, generally. So I mean, but yeah, I think they're the main things that we focus on. But in terms of the specific prep that we do in terms of sessions and reps, I would say not really that much different.
Okay, talking about the volume in the last 3 months, you don't have to give us the numbers, but in comparison also to other races, do you ramp it up a little bit more? Do you have a more aggressive taper or something like that?
Yeah, so with this race, I do a bit heavier volume a little bit further out, and then generally I bring in a little bit less volume. With a little bit more intensity, closer to, which is obviously I think that's what most people do. But I think freshness is more important for this race than any other race. I think, and that's shown if you look at any data, any sports science, that your ability to cope with the heat is massively affected by your fatigue. Right. So if anyone knows that if you have a really hard day, go in the sauna, it feels 10 times harder. Right. And it's the same here. It's better to be more fresh than a little bit. If you come into a race like this and you're a little bit overtrained, or your taper's not quite being long enough, you'll generally come undone a little bit more.
Maybe a little bit better to be over-rested than overtrained or overreached. Let's say it. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I
think that's something that's really important for this race. Is that I know I haven't heard of athletes cramming in stuff in the week of the race, but I think you have to be quite smart with that one.
And did you prepare there's more dense now in the women's field. Yeah. Do you think about that? It's different 5 years ago or 10 years ago. Would you prepare differently?
I mean, we talk about all race situations, right? But the thing is, as a coach, I try not to get too caught up in that stuff, because you just can't control it, right? You don't know what another athlete is going to bring on that given day. I mean, of course, you try and mitigate losses if they are happening, and you try and stay, but you just, I mean, the good thing, it depends, and it also depends on the athlete you're dealing with. Like Chelsea, I'm confident that her run is the best part of her race, right? So it's all about keeping her within contention. She's got to swim to keep in contention. She's got to bike to keep in contention, but also as easily as she possibly can. She's got to, keep her powder dry. She's got to expend as little energy as she possibly can to get to the marathon in the best shape she possibly can, with as small a gap to the front as possible. And that's kind of how it all rolls, right? And then if you can do that, then it's in it for the winning, right? Then you can you can take it.
You can overthink it, I think.
Yeah.
And we have a saying in Germany. I don't know if it's in general also, and for the English-speaking community, but it always comes in a different way, so which you wouldn't think before.
Yeah, exactly. The race. So like when I have my pre-race talk with not just with Chelsea, but with all my athletes, I'll just go through. I'll say, okay, just give me some scenarios. Give me your best case scenario. So tell me what's going to happen in the very best case, your best swim, what's going to happen. And then, because like with Chelsea, she's not going to say, I'm going to come out with Lucy Charles, because that's never going to happen, right? But she could come out with some other people, and that would be a good swim. And then, so now tell me what's going to happen. If you do that, what are you going to do next? And then if that happens, what are you going to do next? But now talk to me, say, what happens if you come out and you have your worst swim ever, and you're 3 minutes behind? Then what are you going to do? I think they're important things to talk through, but I know a lot of coaches just say, they talk through this race strategy, but it's really problematic, because if you say, right, okay, I want you to get on this person's feet at the start of the swim, then stick, and when that doesn't happen,
everything
falls apart. So and it's a long day, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's the way I always try and look at scenarios rather than tactics.
Yeah. It's more like a strategy and not tactics. I think that's the difference between that.
Yeah, exactly.
And
global concepts, I like to call it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good word. Because everybody wants always to know some sessions. People will ask. They will comment under the video. So do you have to give us some key sessions that you would give a pro and an amateur athlete?
Yeah.
4 weeks out, like specific
for
this race.
I think, again, I don't think it's that more. The only thing that would be more specific for each race is that you're trying to get it on the same topography or courses as you would be racing, a similar profile, right? So if you're racing in a hilly terrain, you wouldn't just go and do flat time trial, and you try and match it as best you can. So, but the sessions would be very similar. A big session that I always would give would be 4 by 40 minutes with 10 minutes recovery, just a little bit above Ironman power. For an age group, I would just make that consistent pace, but with
on the bike.
On the bike, yeah.
On the bike. That everybody's on the same page.
You could do that,
really. In the swim.
Yeah. I've heard that Magnus Dietlev did like a 40, 30, 20, 10 running. Would be a big session, but it's doable anyway. Okay. Apparently.
So but 4 times 40 minutes.
Yeah.
I think I know that session.
It's very popular, but it's but I think for a pro, I'd put a few periods of higher power in there as well. Some spices in there. But I think that's a very classic session.
Yeah, it's good.
I'm also
you don't have to invent something new here.
No. I'm also a big fan of just doing straight 100-kilometer time trials.
100.
100k straight.
Okay.
Yeah, just above Ironman power. That's a good one. The athletes love that as well. Most people don't do it though.
No.
Well, they don't like doing that. But the end of the day is that you can be as creative as you like, but the principle of specificity always wins.
We had that with Olaf here.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
They did it last year, right?
Yeah, exactly. I was talking to an athlete the other day. And they had I think 10k at Ironman pace off the bike's a bit much, and I'm like, well, if you're thinking that, then your Ironman pace is not.
No, that's not that one.
It's not that one, exactly. So if you can't do 4 by 40 minutes at just above Ironman power, you're not going to do it in the race, right? So there's
It's also a testing session, right?
Yeah. It can be a testing session, and then on the run, I'm a firm believer of running off the bike a lot. I do that. I do that quite a bit. Nearly all key runs are off the bike, mostly.
Also the long runs?
The long runs not, no, okay. But all tempo-based runs will mostly be off the bike. So I guess VO2 max runs are never off the bike, but all the tempo-based runs are nearly always off the bike.
70.3 pace, around that?
So I would call tempo anywhere between aerobic threshold and anaerobic threshold. And that's kind of the whole range, right? So you might be a bit above and then a bit at the bottom.
That's what I'm thinking about, 17.3, somewhere there.
So 70.3 would be closer to your
to the LT2,
whereas Ironman's closer to your LT1.
Right.
But generally, I'll do a lot of things which is going out a little bit harder, so closer to 70.3 or even sometimes a threshold, and then settling back down to
find your rhythm.
Yeah, or even to simulate the start of a race, because most people set out fast, right?
We saw that here a couple of times.
Yeah, exactly. So most people set out fast, but it's Ironman is all about performing under fatigue, right? So it's quite hard to do that when you're without doing an Ironman, right? So if you can make things harder at the start and then go easier after, so you do the opposite build. So most people will go, okay, I'm going to do like 4 by 30 minutes, and I'm going to go 240 watts, 250 watts, 260 watts, 270 watts. I'll do it the opposite way around. 270 to
build the fatigue and then
and then come into your Ironman pace. So then you're building the fatigue up at the start, and then you go into your Ironman pace.
It's like a concept of durability also.
Yes,
I think.
it's the same thing. Yeah. So you're and it's the same running. Is that you start off a little bit faster, then go into your Ironman pace. It builds up that durability. It means that you have to run under fatigue a bit more. And it's also really good to see how the heart rate responds, because if athletes go into an Ironman pace and the heart rate drops into Ironman heart rate, you're definitely on the money.
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah, but
there's a good space then.
Then you're doing really well. Even if you get, but like if they drop into the Ironman pace and it stays, and it's like a flat line, then you're like,
I had that yesterday on the way back from Javier.
Yeah. But this is where the heat plays.
No, of course.
The heat plays such a big role.
I can show you
in
my
that.
core temperature values.
Yeah.
Didn't recover that well.
Yeah.
So we have the brick session, I would say.
Yeah.
What is the long run about? What is it's always tricky.
I mean, it depends on the athlete, but 3 hours.
3 hours.
Yeah,
Okay.
we do 3 hours.
You saw my eyes. 3 hours.
Yeah. We do 3 hour long runs.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm a former swimmer. You don't see that on my shoulders, but I'm a former swimmer.
Yeah.
What is a key session for the Ironman?
I do a lot of strength work. Like I'll do like a bit of pull paddles and whatnot, but I think
band?
Also sometimes band. Yeah, band makes it a lot harder, of course.
And a towel, like the Australians?
No, not a towel.
Okay.
Don't go for the towel. But I think again, it depends on the athlete. Like if it's a non-swimmer, I wouldn't be giving a set of 4 1000s. But I think most triathletes, they don't do the long swims, and the long swims are absolutely key. So I think like key sessions would be like 4 1000s or 10 400s, not 40 100s, which is a nicer session to do.
Yeah.
Or
it's a little bit faking it. Yeah.
It's faking it, exactly. Yeah. It's like running on the treadmill at 0.5%, thinking you're running well. It's the same concept. I think that's really important. But I mean, a session that I like to do is like 4 1000s, but you go 200 at your Ironman pace, 200 at your 70.3 pace, and then 100 just cruise, and then you repeat it twice. And that's
you have a little shift in it.
Yeah. So you have to be a good swimmer to do this, though, because most people don't have the.
For age group athletes, it's quite
hard. So you could just do the straight 1000. Yeah. Or I think even if you're not changing pace, if you change effort, I think that's good enough.
Right?
Yeah, it's good enough. So you do 200 moderate, 200 a little bit harder, 100 easy, breaks up the 1000. It's quite a good way to do that session.
I like that one.
Yeah. When I was at uni, we used to do that session, but 3 1500s. That's not pleasant.
No, but that's honest.
Yeah, it's very honest. Yeah. I'm also a fan of just like 2K straight at the end of sessions and stuff. It doesn't have to be hard, but I think
aerobic tail, I would call it.
Yeah, exactly. So a session, a good session that I do quite frequently with my athletes is solid warm up, like threshold, a good threshold session. So working all around that critical swim speed pace. And then a bit of easy, and then into a straight 2000. Yeah. But just like CSS +4 +5.
Second.
Yeah, 5 per 100. So if your CSS is 120s, you're doing 124s. So it's easier, but it's still a little bit honest.
It's not dreaming in the water.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, exactly. So it's that sort of thing. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that sounds really familiar
Yeah.
to Ironman training, I
Yeah.
would give the athletes. Or
Yeah, yeah.
I think a lot of guests we already had here.
Yeah, yeah.
So
yeah.
I think it's always nice to see that in the end it comes together.
Because in the end, there's nothing. I mean, I think that the sessions in itself is completely meaningless. Really, I always say that training is like music. So music, there's 5 different notes really, you know, but it's the order that you put them together and the way you have the timing of them that creates the melody. And it's the same in training. You can give someone as many sessions as you want, and I'll give people the sessions that Chelsea or Javier do, but it's the order that they go is key. Which is why that when I have an athlete, they'll say, "Oh, can I put my training on Strava?" I say you can put some training on Strava, but not all of it.
Okay.
Because if you can get the pattern, I think that actually tells a good story.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, Dan. Last block is all about coaching.
Right. Okay.
Do you see any differences between a male and a female athlete? Because you're training now both genders. So, what is the main difference, or if there is one?
Yeah, I don't know if there's differences between males and females. I just really think there's differences between individuals. You know, I think even now there's a lot of talk. You know, females are different to males, of course. But I see more variation between humans than I do a lot of the time between males and females. And I think like if you were to ask me how I coach athletes, I coach them depending on the person. And even my wife will say that, you know, she'll be in the car with me and I'm talking, you know, I have 3 conversations with 3 different athletes and the way I talk to them is totally different, you know, depending on who they are. And that's kind of the approach that I take. So I don't say big difference between males and females, but I say big differences between individuals. Yeah.
Okay. And talking a little bit about nutrition, not micronutrition, but in general, how is that part of your coaching? Because of course you coach the Keto Cop. We had that joke.
Yeah.
So is that part of your coaching
I
philosophy?
mean, I think I work with. I'm not a nutritionist myself, obviously, but I have concepts that I believe are the best. So I'm not. I wouldn't say I'm as carb heavy generally as most coaches are. I think it's something that needs to be refined, and I definitely have influence or talk about when to add in the carbs and when to take them out or not include as many for different training sessions. So I wouldn't say that I have, you know, for breakfast eat this, for dinner do this, and like having that kind of overall global nutrition, but I do go for this kind of right fuel, right time approach. So I'm also part of S Fuels, so the company S Fuels, which is a nutrition company, and that's our thing is right fuel, right time, where the idea is that for your high intensity sessions, yes, you're adding carbohydrates, but then for your lower intensity sessions, you're really trying to build up your fat oxidation and your ability to burn fat as a fuel over carbohydrates.
Yeah, this is, I already showed one of your studies or one of your papers, like different horses on...
Different horses on the same courses.
I really like that one.
Sports med,
So I think there you showed the meaning of fat oxidation for also that race and stuff.
Exactly, because it's, at the end of the day, it is very important.
Yeah.
And it means you can only oxidize carbs at a certain level.
Yeah.
There's a higher power output that's going out for most of these individuals, and it's something that needs to be addressed. And if you just don't really think about it, it won't be very good. So, yeah.
Great. And last block of questions, 2 questions in one maybe. What is your biggest challenge in coaching, and how do you deal with it?
I think the biggest challenge in coaching is when things go wrong, you know, and I think like it's not an easy business, to be honest, and it's not always winning and doing well. In fact, most of the time it's a bit of heartache, and I think as a coach you take things very personally. Not personally, but it's just as an athlete feels when they've had a bad race. As a coach, you also have that burden, you know. So, you know, I liken it to like when Javier, for example, we were training for, it was when the World Championships was in Utah. You know, we had the best training block ever. We put so much into it, literally every detail you could possibly imagine. and then he got COVID like a week before, and he was really sick, and it just completely derailed everything. So things like that are really hard to take, and it's also really hard to take when your athlete has a bad run or has a bad race, like Chelsea had E. coli when she did Roth, for example. You know, you really hold those as a coach, and often I think, you know, one is you want the best for your athlete, you want them to be, you hate seeing them sad, but also I think everyone questions themselves a little bit. Everyone has that level of imposter syndrome. You know, you're thinking, am I really cut out for this? But yeah, it's I think they're the big challenges.
Yeah. And which of the challenges did you master, if this is the right word, and which is still ongoing, so to say?
Yeah.
If you want to talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think there's still an ongoing thing. I mean, I think everyone always struggles when things don't go right, you know, and I think you know, in the end of the day, you're just trying to do your best. But I think I definitely wouldn't say I've really mastered that. But like, I do think I'm now better at communicating with athletes than I used to be. I mean, if you think about my background, I used to look at things through a lens of pure physiology, you know, training and physiology. But now I would say you know, like there's art and science of coaching. You know, I'm still firmly on the science side, but you know, I would say that I shift into the art a little bit more. And especially when a pro tells me something, they say, I'm tired today, or this, I really do take attention and pay attention to it and listen, because they know, you know, they're a pro for a reason. Whereas age groupers, I'm not. I mean, of course I'll listen, but I won't. I'll push it a little bit more, because often they just don't know what it's like to really train that hard. So yeah, I think they're the main things.
Interesting, because this is one of the main things coaches tell us also in our Coaches Corner podcast. It's the main challenge is communication, and especially when you're coming like me from a university and science background, and then you have to deal with, of course, human beings. That's a different ball game, actually.
And you can't, and no matter what, you can't learn that stuff. You know, it's only experience that gives you that time. I mean, this year I've spent a lot more time one-on-one with Chelsea, and it's been really good. Really good. Like every time we're together, no matter what, she has a great training block, and I think it is that it's not just the communication, it's the camaraderie. And I was talking to Aaron Rose before I left New Zealand to come here, and I said to him, you know, next year we've never had time together, and I said we need to spend time together. You know, we need to be on a camp, we need to spend time together, even just so we can, you know, even when you're together then you go away, it's better when you're away. When you've been together, you know. So I think that's something that's quite important.
And because this video is coming out after the race, so
I'm not doing any predictions.
No. Okay, fair enough. But you told me that the form is quite good, so so fingers crossed.
Yeah.
And we will all see
exactly. Yeah.
The result.
And I mean, you never know which athletes or who's going to turn up on race day and what they're going to bring, right? You know, so you know, you see performances that are very up and down. So if the best performances come, you don't know.
Speaking about Chelsea, nobody, I think, not nobody, but not very much people had her on the list. Last year, she told on the press conference, "This is my first press conference here." You know, that speaks for herself.
And even now, she's still not. People aren't picking her for the top 3. So, and that's only a good thing in my eyes. So I think, I mean, obviously there's more pressure than last year, of course.
Yeah.
But
it's not like for Daniela after 5 victories here.
Yeah. I mean, I think bookies have her as a top. My brother told me, he messaged me and says Daniela's top and Chelsea was second. So
okay,
yeah,
we'll see.
You will see.
Yeah. So thank you so much for sharing all your experiences, knowledge, and we put down your studies from PubMed, maybe your most read one or your most interesting for triathletes, also about HRV.
Yeah. That's if you go Google Scholar.
Yeah,
that's the top one's a HRV one, Sports Med, which is probably the best one for anyone interested in HRV because it's a current opinion piece, which is a bit of a overview of
Good one.
of using HRV in elite athletes.
So you will, I will have to look in the camera. You will find this under the video in the info box. And thanks again. We in our community always appreciate, especially again, the night before the race.
Yeah, not a bad backdrop though.
Yeah, right timing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.